Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria. I'm project manager at EFDN, and today I will present our project Raising the Red Card, which focuses on using the power of football to tackle discrimination and racism in and off the pitch. Before I start talking about the project, I would like to introduce EFDN, our organization, for the ones that don't know about EFDN. The European Football for Development Network consists in professional football clubs, leagues and federations who are committed to make a positive change in the communities by using football as a tool for social development. We run different CSR projects on health, education, employability, social inclusion, social cohesion, sustainability, and good governance. The background of this project, why we decided to run this project, is because on professional and grassroots football, racist incidents are increasing, and the numbers remain a major challenge for all the sport organizations. Even when fans weren't allowed to go to the stadium, we have seen that the abuse of social media have increased a lot. Also during the Euro 2020, I think that we saw clearly why activism and speaking out against racism and discrimination remains necessary. And unfortunately, it's not just a one-time thing. It didn't happen just in the Euro. You can see here that the most of the images are from racist incidents that happened last week. So there are a lot. We are not talking about 10 years ago or 5 years ago. This happened just last week. In EFDN, we believe that football has a responsibility to be exemplary. Football and any sport, it is supposed to be inclusive, to be universal, and to promote equality. And also clubs are examples in the communities. And even though players do not sign up to be role models, football players reach millions. So this project was launched in 2019. It is funded by the Rights, Equality and Citizen Program of the European Commission. It was launched together with our official project partners that are Benfica, Brentford, Chelsea, Club Brugge, Inter de Milan, Ludogorets, Rangers and Werder Bremen. And currently 83 football professional and grassroots clubs from 16 different countries have participated in our project. The two main aspects of this program is firstly our Red Card campaign, which is a communication campaign, and secondly our Diversity Wins educational program. I'm going to explain now both. The Red Card campaign, it was created based on Raising the Red Card UK. Raising the Red UK is an organization that is well known for create awareness and have educational programs against racism. Our goal with the Red Card campaign was to use the platform of football and also EFDN network to give the project a European level. And anyone involved in sport, football players, people working on the foundations, everyone that can take a stand against discrimination by holding our red cards. Currently, we have the red cards in 20 European languages. And this is just some example of clubs that have already participated in our campaigns. So for example, you can see Bayer Leverkusen, Almeria, Montpellier, Dinamo Zagreb, Deportivo Alavés, and many more that have participated. Also, reaching out grassroots clubs is also essential for our educational approach, because we really believe that anyone can make a difference in their communities. Because of that, we are developing specific resources adapted to the grassroots needs. For example, we are currently creating a grassroots toolkit to help coaches to prevent, react and report discriminatory incidents, and also posters and educational leaflets for children in our topics that I will explain now more about what we cover in our program. Okay, in general, our program consists of 5 workshops, 1 day of sports activities, and 1 final event. We created together with our project partners the workbook for children and the teacher's manual with examples of different activities that you could deliver at schools. It was thought to be implemented for children between 7 and 15 years old, and is delivered in schools across Europe. So the topics that we cover in these programs, we divide all the lessons in 5 chapters. The first chapter is about racism. In this chapter, there are exercises that help students to understand what is racism and how racism could affect others. In the second chapter, differences and similarities between us, we address also prejudices, and children learn that, well, everyone is different, but these differences are what make us also unique. In the third chapter, it's about religions and symbols. In this chapter, we give an introduction of the most important religions in the world. For example, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and the children learn here about the traditions of the religions, the symbols, dress codes, what all these religions have in common, and so on. Our fourth chapter is LGBT+ and homophobia. In this chapter, we give an insight in different sexual orientations, but also gender identities and gender expressions, while also we address homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia. And the last chapter of our educational program is racism and discrimination in sport. This chapter, this last chapter, sums up what the children have been learned in the previous chapters, and also it's more focus on discrimination in sport with some examples, and specifically also in football. We also offer the possibility of creating club branded books that, from our experience, it worked really well at schools, because children see their favorite players as a role model. So looking at the pictures of the favorite players in the book, we believe that, well, the impact can be bigger, it can have a bigger impact. Okay, so all the educational and communication materials are freely accessible on our website, as I mentioned. So we have the teacher's manual and the workbooks, currently in 9 European languages, the red cards in 28 European languages. And apart from that, we have also mobile cards and stadium banners in case that you want to do a match day campaign. Okay, apart from the previous resources, we have a new feature also on the website when any club can create their own visuals and banners for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with the club logo and the club colors. One of the important topics for EFDN is diversity and inclusion. Tourism the Red Card has been the first program focused on the topic, but we want to do a lot more. So while running this program, we also are running different campaigns. For example, we created the Women in Football campaign, which goal is create visibility for women working in the football industry, and also to contribute to create role models for future generations. And we supported, of course, the LGTB Plus Month of Action organized by Fair Network and Football Against Homophobia. During this month, we conducted 4 interviews that you also can check in our website. Well, in the future, hopefully, we will be running the Diversity Wins program, which focuses on gender equality and LGBTQ plus phobias, because we think that it's really important that discrimination is on the top of the agenda, and it's not just a one-day campaign during the whole year. You can become a partner by joining our Red Card campaign. We could provide you with a set of red cards in your own language, but also you can use our educational program to deliver all these lessons with our support at the schools. If you're a football club and you want to join, you will have the power, of course, to make a positive change in society and convey inclusive values. And well, we are willing and also happy to welcome any new partner to our project. So just to finish my presentation, if you want to take part in, or you need more information about that, or if you have any question, please feel free to contact, well, in this case, Tourism the Red Card. You can contact me or my colleague Vicky, that is working also in the project, or through our social media. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you soon holding our red cards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias, Maria. There has been posted one question which is related to the campaign. Maybe we can answer that one right away. It's about who conducts the program sessions in the schools, volunteers or people of local clubs. Shay would like to know. Can you answer that still, Maria?
How is the process?
Yeah, if the program sessions in the schools, are they delivered by the clubs, amateur or professional clubs, by volunteers? I think sometimes even by EFDN people. Do you have a better insight in that?
Yeah, it depends on the partners or the club that contact us. Some clubs have also volunteers taking part in this project, but usually the clubs contact us and they organize, they talk with the schools that they can deliver the season. We can support all the clubs with teachers trainings. And here in the Netherlands, we go to some of the schools, also EFDN, as we are based here, to deliver these sessions. I hope this answers the question.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. Then, yeah, we go over to the United States, where it's probably very early in the morning. Shay Weller of the National Collegiate Athletic Association. Welcome this early morning for you. Shay and his team are promoting, advocating, and educating on inclusive cultures, with the focus on race, gender, equity, and disability in international students, for international students and athletes. Shay, I would like to give the word to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Stein and EFDN. Good job, Maria. Very interesting presentation. And as I dive into mine, I will try to share my screen. I think you should be able to see my presentation now.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah, indeed. Good afternoon. Goedemiddag, bonus tardes. In my case, good morning. I am connecting from the other side of the pond today, from the United States. My name is Shay Warlock. I serve as the Assistant Director of Inclusion at the NCAA. I recently graduated from the master's program with the Cruyff Institute, where I explore the intersection of diversity, equity, and inclusion with CSR. And I'll refer to it now as DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. You will probably hear me say that a lot. Yeah, I think both DEI and CSR are very, very relevant to the topic of the webinar. So I'm very happy to be here today. And again, thank you and kudos to EFDN, their efforts to help clubs and FAs and leagues to fight discrimination in its various forms. It's such an important initiative. Yeah, just last week we got a reminder that anti-Semitism is still an issue in European football. As you surely are aware, an Israeli club, which is my native country, if I haven't mentioned, played a UEFA Conference League match in Berlin and was a victim to some nasty behavior. But I was encouraged by the club's reaction. It was swift, it was unambiguous, it was clarifying that it's not acceptable. So kudos to Union Berlin, I believe it was, for handling it well. Yeah, we're living in very interesting times since sports entities these days are finding their moral compass. From all kinds of reasons, right? And sports organizations more than ever starting to understand that not only they can utilize their power for greater good and for social causes, they are obligated to do so in a sense. At least that is my interpretation. The more advanced ones also understand that it's their business best interest as well, since there are so many benefits to DE&I other than, you know, it being the right thing to do. So I know after me we'll hear about more specific campaigns, and as Maria have already shared, campaigns are very effective tools to increase awareness, to promote a cause during perhaps a short period of time. But when the discrimination we are fighting is systemic, the tools that at our disposal must be utilized much more strategically. So in this presentation, I'll talk about the strategy behind the NCAA efforts to tackle discrimination in different dimensions of diversity. I will be reviewing today a bit about my organization, why and what we are doing, and how do we go about it. We'll review what does developing strategies looks like. How do we then take the strategy and carry it out? What happens when you as an organization have to react to organic social notions, which would be an interesting one. And we'll finish with some best practices. Stein or Maria, I'm not sure I'll be able to see the question. So if anyone wants to ask something, just please feel free to interrupt.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll transmit them.
Excellent. Thank you. So real quickly, just to have everybody on the same page, the NCAA is governing body running collegiate sports in America, and college sports is a big deal here. To generalize, Americans see professional sports more as entertainment, but communities here really identify with their local college team. So this is a major opportunity in terms of influence and social causes. So we'll get to that. There are almost 1,200 universities and colleges, almost 500,000 student athletes in 24 sports, men and women. And in terms of DEI efforts, we're working with a very wide spectrum. Some are very proactive in fighting prejudice and discriminations. Others may not be ready yet. I think similarly to Europe, we know the geographic location is tied to the level of readiness. So this makes our work as a national office challenging because our job is to support all of them on the spectrum, but they are all in different places in their journey. In terms of why we would even pursue this kind of work, DEI is a core value of the association. So our work is anchored in policy, in a sense. In this policy, we specifically mention many dimensions of diversity, as you can see at the bottom of your screen in red font. And this is probably the place to say, battling discrimination is basically the essence of DEI work. And the result of this is the culture of belonging, as Stein mentioned earlier. For sports organization, it is your best interest to ensure that your culture is not exclusionary to anyone. You want surely every fan, every athlete, every employee in your system feel that your space is safe and that is fair and that is welcoming to them. Our 5 core areas, also Stein have touched on that, and you can see it on the screen. These 5 were not selected randomly. We are a membership-driven organization. That means that the membership needs, that's what dictating our priorities as a national office. And in terms of the process, and this is the image on the left of the screen, we utilize a lot of research to identify what are the challenges and recurring trends. Then we work with affiliates and experts to create resources. It can be programs, it can be written best practices. We're just providing ongoing support because the membership, they're not expected to be the experts. They have us for guidance and for assistance. As you can note, anti-Semitism is not one of the core areas. And of course, different countries, different social problems. So there's no need to analyze or compare priorities. But one quick word on discrimination and anti-Semitism as we dive into strategies. So first, we all have multiple identities. I'm an Israeli native, Jewish, grandchild of German citizens who fled Europe in the 1940s. So a minority in this regard. But at the same time, I'm also a privileged individual because I'm a white male living in a Western society which systemically discriminates against people of color, women, LGBTQ, and other marginalized groups. So all of this is just to say there are common threads, between types of discrimination. In most cases, it is systemic. And also in most cases, sports organizations are positioned to affect the change by utilizing their influence on a community, by being proactive, intentional, and by being strategic. So that is what DEI in sports is all about, at least for me. And now I think we can dive a little bit deeper. So in most Western societies, certainly in the sports industry, what does the default of decision maker looks like, if we're being honest? Usually white, male, straight, cisgender, able-bodied, tax-savvy, wealthy background. So that is the default. And then everything else is other or diverse. So this is a circle we must break. We need to get used to put the other in the center of things because people are people and people are different than one another. In terms of sports entities, leadership teams that are usually consisted of privileged individuals, the most common mistake I see them doing is making assumptions. They decide themselves what are the needs of marginalized groups in their sphere. And we have seen that approach backfires many times in the last 2 years. That's a topic for a different webinar. But usually that's an indication that the intentions are not sincere when you are making those decisions without bringing people to the table. So instead, indeed, that's what you have to do. Bring everyone to the table, and especially the groups that it needs you are trying to address in a campaign. You need to survey the stakeholders. You need to assess the climate. You have to give them a voice and just know what the climate is within your organization. Are people feeling safe? are they respected? So in a sense, we have to assume we have blind spots. Again, different identities. I identify as a white person, as a straight person. I won't be able to know, because of my experiences, I won't be able to know what are necessarily the needs of a person of color or a person who identifies as gay, for an example. So we need to find out what those blind spots that we have. Once we identify those, we need to be vocal about it, and we need to talk about it within our organization, with our leadership, with our colleagues, with our fans. There needs to be a dialogue. And surely, it's not a surprise, sensitive topics like racism, for example, is something most clubs or sports entities are not that eager to discuss, at least not seriously. Because it's difficult. It's difficult to talk about discrimination. It's difficult to look in the mirror and accept that we might have been oblivious to someone else's pain. But that is exactly what makes it so important. Talk about it. Otherwise, it will remain buried forever and never resolved. So then we need to pinpoint what are the topics of areas that are most important and focus on those. Since we can't solve all the problem in the world, so we have to hone in. And then the key is to understand, is this really systemic? And what does that mean? Systemic discrimination, it's not a problem that can be solved by replacing one bad apple at the organization. You know, many times you see organizations say, we're sorry, we had an employee, made a mistake, that person is no longer with us. But when it's systemic, it means that the problem is across the board and usually stemming from much deeper social issues that are far greater than sports even. Luckily, there is a way to examine if a group is marginalized or not, and that is demographic review. So we're looking at NCAA 2020 data, and we're looking at a comparison by gender and race ethnicity between demographics of athletes in blue, head coaches in orange, and athletics director in yellow. Athletics director is the person at the top of the pyramid, maybe the equivalent of a general manager, maybe a sports director. So again, the highest or the most senior leader. So what do we see in this comparison is that, let's look at the left. Student athletes, white males are only 1/3 of all student athletes. However, they are 2/3 of all the head coaches and 2/3 of all of the athletics directors. So miraculously, this population is overrepresented. In all other groups, exactly the opposite. Their percentage for females, white and black, and for other minorities, which is Asian Americans, Pacific Islander, Hispanic and Latinx, and other smaller groups, but all of them are underrepresented. One more quick look into a comparison between head coaches and assistant coaches. Same thing. When you look at the head of the pyramid, women and minorities can be found in higher numbers only at the mid-level as assistant coaches, but not at the top, because that, unfortunately, as the data suggests, those groups have a ceiling. And again, we see that white male are overrepresented. So this is a good example how to use demographics in order to understand who is being discriminated and by who. In terms of executions, let's move on to an example of how to carry out a strategy. So this is an example of NCAA Division III a few years ago, based on a climate assessment. They decided they want to improve the inclusion of LGBTQ. That was defined as their strategic objective. So they formed a working group, representative from across the membership, including LGBTQ folks on this group. And those are people who are knowledgeable and care about this cause and willing to contribute. And that group started by defining goals, SMART goals, as you see on the screen. That stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-limited goals. And they created a logo. That was the first step. There it is. And with this logo, they printed stickers and banners and items such as pins and pens And teams across the membership were thrilled to use it. And of course, we asked them to use a hashtag. So it spread on social media, it became viral, it created a buzz. And if you think about people who identify as LGBTQ within this division, surely this step alone has made them, whether they're athletes or coaches or administrators, make them feel more welcome, make them feel as they are seen. The next step for them was creating a program that is train the trainer. We can't educate everyone. So we took 60 coaches and we trained them on how to facilitate the most basic program on LGBTQ inclusion, with the expectation, we paid for them for their trip and their lodging. They came to the national office for a couple of days, with the expectation that in return, they go back to campus and they talk about it with their teams and with their colleagues. So that was 2 years ago. And to date, almost 4,000 people participated in sessions that those 60 individuals conducted. It created a ripple effect. It reached so many people, so that's a big win. Again, we cannot educate everyone, so we need to certify agents that can spread the knowledge. And then finally, we created an annual award, LGBTQ Student Athlete of the Year, LGBTQ Coach of the Year. This creates visibility. It allows a marginalized group to celebrate itself, to be proud, and to feel wholeheartedly that they are accepted by the NCAA as it should and as everyone deserves. We'll go on to the next example. And this is really interesting. This pertains to racial justice. In this case, we have learned a lot since our effort to admit were reactionary. We didn't do enough beforehand. And then in May 2020, George Floyd's horrific murder have sparked, I'm sure you all follow the news, sparked a huge wave of national protest calling for social justice. And this was nothing short than a junction in history, in my interpretation, because that was the first time ever that we saw fans and athletes and sponsors, everyone really, demanding sports organizations utilize their influence, stop being silent about injustices. This was unfolding very quickly and organically from the grassroots. So overnight, our office was flooded with questions on how to support activism. We had coaches and administrators. They saw their athletes rising up and becoming socially engaged, and they needed to help them. Last fall, another uptick just before the US election. Same thing, athletes all over the country felt the need to use their power, and that was amazing to watch, by the way, and heartwarming. So we were reactionary to something organic, but we still needed a clear path. So the first thing we did is to obtain data. We have an excellent research department. They surveyed the constituents, they published a study, and that study found that civic engagement is something very important to the membership, that a lot of them feel responsible to act, and that these topics are also affecting their mental health. So this yielded some very cool initiatives. We facilitated a process of creating something that's called a unity pledge. Again, it went viral. We produced videos and images and content. We created resources to guide campuses on how to be active. We also collected external resources, excuse me. We shared with them. So today, every coach or administrators or an athlete who is interested in civic engagement has an abundance of tools on our website, and we hope they feel supported. Quick other examples, diversity and inclusion designees. This is a new one. So every athletic department, I mentioned the 1,200, almost 1,200 universities and colleges, every one of them recently had to designate someone as the contact point for DEI. And this is not a job. They didn't create or hire people for that. It's a designation. So some of them are coaches, some of them holds an administrative role, like, for example, press officer. And that designee receives our communication, information on events, resources. They reach out to us with questions. So it's a dialogue. If they have a question on campus, they say, oh, wait, we have a designee, we have someone that is in touch with the national office, and that's the dialogue that we're talking about. And this was derived out of the need for accountability. If no one is designated, a club can say, yeah, we didn't get the memo, right? We never heard about the campaign. So it's very important to define who within your club or organization is responsible, so it doesn't fall through the cracks. And speaking of accountability, the need for it is at the highest level. The most senior leaders, they are the one who needs to model the way in inclusion. So that's why we created the Presidential Pledge, which is a voluntary act. So college presidents can sign a public pledge, which is stating their institution values diversity and taking steps to become more diverse in terms of hiring practices. So again, it's voluntary, but it's also public. So every fan or athlete can know if their organization has pledged to pursue those values. And by the way, we're around 80% of them that have signed it today. And those who haven't signed it, they don't owe any answers to us, but they might owe those answers to their constituents, to their community. So it's a very interesting one. Okay, we are nearing the end of the presentation. So there's just a few takeaways you would want to walk out with today. Remember these. The efforts are more effective, obviously, if it's ongoing. If one campaign builds on another, on top of another, and if we're generating a dialogue, right, we're getting people to talk about it, be aware, but we have to supplement it with actions. Events are a big part of it, in person or webinars like today, conferences, any reason to bring like-minded people together to exchange the knowledge and advance the conversation. Awards, as I mentioned, is a great mean towards some level of equity, since it's allow you to celebrate a marginalized group. I mentioned the LGBTQ Student Athlete of the Year. We also have an annual Woman of the Year award. We have a Diversity and Inclusion Award for schools that are active. Let's see. And then in terms of resources, okay, so whether you are a club trying to educate your fans, or maybe you're a league or a football association working with the clubs, you want to make the info available. All of these concepts that are here on the screens, there are important notions that we try to make digestible or palatable for our stakeholders. And of course, social media, the preferred channel to promote awareness, but it's also to create the ripple effect, since you are activating the constituents. We have an annual DEI social media campaign. The students love it. And again, that was creating the ripple effect that we want. So that's it. Our time is up, I believe. So I'll encourage you all to just listen to the needs of your community, to build a relationship with the stakeholders. Again, you don't have to be the expert on discrimination or anti-Semitism or any topic. You just need to understand the why, the purpose, and be proactive, intentional, sensitive. And I'll close with what I have started with. As sports organizations, we are pillars of community, and we can and we must be engaged on social issues because we have the influence, and with that comes the responsibility. And to those who are discriminated, again, I think that for them, I cannot speak for them. Again, I'm a privileged individual, but I think that for marginalized communities, collective silence is basically violence, and that's why we wanna do our best, and we wanna act towards greater equity and justice. Yeah, so that's what I have for you today. If you have any questions or any comments, we'd love to hear you.
Well, thank you so much, Shay, for your time and for sharing these values and strategies. It's really interesting to see how those topics are approached in the United States. That brings us back to the Netherlands, to Vitesse Arnhem, where Femke Maat is a project employee of Vitesse Betrokken. She's responsible for supporters projects and making efforts to solve issues on the municipality level. And one of her projects is to bring more respect among kids in secondary school education. So Femke, very warm welcome also to you.
Thank you.
Not that far away in distance as
No.
Shay is, but yeah, would like to give you all the spotlights. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen also. I think, can you see it now?
Okay. Yes.
Well, thank you for the introduction. You said, yeah, the first things that I'm going to tell you right away. Well, I'm going to start with, yeah, a good start, I think. My name, what I am, what I do. Stijn also told it, but I am Femke Maat, 23 years old. I'm from the Netherlands, op Hemert, a very small village. I don't think anybody knows it. But my hobbies, of course, soccer, football, and friends, and the combination is the best, of course. Yeah, well, my work, I am project coordinator at Vitesse Betrokken. Vitesse Betrokken is the foundation of Vitesse Arnhem, the soccer club. I work here since May last year. So yes, it's some point longer than a year. And last month I got, yeah, the great news, I got a permanent contract. So that's very nice. Yeah, about my work, it's very yeah, diverse, varied. I got some structural projects. I'll show them right away. But the respect lesson is one of them, of the supporters projects we lead. Yes, what Vitesse Betrokken is well, the foundation, of course, but we work with all kinds of supporters, all age groups, disorders, mentally, physically, everybody actually, but also secondary school, and that's where we do the respect lesson. But first, before I go into that, I'm going to show you a quick movie about yes, our work, and you can get a good impression. Oh, I think I stopped it a little bit earlier. But I think you give it the right impression of my work. You saw the different age groups, people with a disorder, without. You can also see that in our main projects. As you can see on the left, we got 2 health programs for the healthy lifestyle. Vitesse Goals for the lower school, Vitesse Fit for adults. So that's, of course, a big difference. Vitesse Hattrick for social skills, where respect also has a big task. Vitesse Werkt, reintegration, wishes and requests. I translated that, but in Dutch it sounds a little bit better. But as it says, people come to Vitesse Betrokken with questions about my father is a Vitesse fan and his birthday is next week. Can you do something for that? My neighbor is ill Can you arrange a visit for him? It goes, every possibility is always possible. So yes, these are the 6 main projects, but also non-structural. You can see it on the background right now. That's a G trophy, also a very, very nice program we got to do this year again. So I think I gave you a right impression of what Vitesse Betrokken is. If you want more information, you can always visit our site, but that's for later. Yeah, respect in football, we talked about it the whole hour, but it's very important. And I think, of course, it's everywhere and it's not everywhere. Yeah, football is, of course, a fantastic sport where everybody can enjoy, as in the Netherlands, as in the whole world. We all have the responsibility as well to ensure that everybody can have a pleasant and carefree way to go see soccer in the stadium, but also at home or in the cafes. But yeah, we all know that this not always works like that. But it's definitely the goal that we also have as a soccer club, that our stadium visits, but also the bond and the relationship we have with our fans is respectful, pleasant, and safe. So in addition to that, we give our respect lessons. So that is where I want to talk about now. Yeah, secondary school, I think bij ons heet het middelbare school. After the first years of school, they go to here. They're like 11 to 12 years old, the children we gave the lesson to. And we try to give 36 classes a year the lesson. Our lesson is, apart from what the Show the Red Card program is, like 12 lessons I could call, but we have just like one. So we go back to the same school every year so we can have more children learn and talk, very important, about respect and what it is and how do you do it. I have given the lesson now about a year, and everybody is always very curious and surprised about what it actually already means and where they can see it, but they don't, how do I say it? They are, I don't know. They see it in their whole daily life, and they did not expect that. That is what I want to say. Yes, where we do the lessons about is in the first place respect for yourself. That's always where we start, because we think that that is the main thing respect is apart from. So respect for yourself is how you want to be treated, how you think everybody is treating you, and loving yourself. That's also a very important thing we want to share with the children. In addition to that, of course, respect for the others, but also the environment is also very important. Everybody always thinks, oh, it's just like holding on the door for the next person behind me, but they see it everywhere. So as I said, they are surprised by that. But where is it more about? Yes, various forms of discrimination. We are learning from these webinars very much, and we take some themes from that and take it into our own lessons. So that's very nice. So thank you, EFDN, for that. Why do we give the lesson? That is now what Stijn just said, from our supporters project. The gemeente, I don't know what it is called in English, but our city tells us to learn our supporters and fans, but also the people here in Arnhem who are sometimes no Vitesse fan. To respect each other and to handle the city like they want to be treated as well. But in the club, we have a common goal, and that's what I just said, a respectful, pleasant, and of course, maybe the most important, safe stadium visit. So that's also what, of course, the club are trying to do itself, but they also try to bring it forward to the foundation to have real projects as the respect lesson to set the goal and work to that. And also a good relationship between the club and the fans is also what we try to achieve. Jong geleerd is oud gedaan. Een mooi Nederlands is a nice English Dutch saying. What stands for when you teach something really young, it is a guide for the rest of your life. So we try to aim on that because they are learning very quick at this age. Some people say when they are 11 or 12, that's pretty young to talk about and think about these themes because they could be pretty heavy. But we think that learning it at this age in a very safe way. I'm going to talk about it in the next one. But in a safe space, learning about these themes is very important when you are young, so that you can guide it and bring it forward to the rest of your life. And also, in addition to that, copying from each other is a really common thing when you're 11, 12 years old, just on secondary school. So that's why we also always do it to the freshman year, so we can come back later, a year later, to the same school with the new children and give the lesson as well. Very important is how we give the lesson because, as I said, it is quite a heavy theme and subject. So safe space to think about these themes and to talk about it is what we really try to achieve and also really tell them when we start. The third point, listen to each other, is for the first point that we tell them is not to speak through them, through the others, because no judgments as well. That's very important to give everybody his own opinion and yes, that they also feel free to tell their own opinion. The inspiring environment, that is because we try to invite the classes to Geldo, our stadium, so we can also, the safe space is probably at school, but when they come to us, there's out of the comfort zone, but when we try to make it a safe environment there, is it also inspiring? So we try to combine out of the box and out of their comfort zone with just a safe and calm environment to talk about these themes. And the last, just practical, a PowerPoint presentation is what we use, but very important with that is really interactive. So we always talk with them, we questioning everything that we tell them. We try to ask for their opinion and open just the conversation, but also in a safe way and in a calm way, the discussion. When they have this age, they try to have their own opinion, but that is sometimes a bit difficult. But when you go through the lesson and you're getting halfway at the end, you see that they are probably getting a little bit loose and they're feeling safe to tell everything they want. So that's very nice. So I think that it is eigenlijk the most important things that we do. It was not a very, very long presentation, but I think I told you how we do it, and I think it is for our club a very important lesson that we give, and we try to do it as much as possible. So yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if there are any questions.
I've not received any questions so far in the chat, but that doesn't mean that there are no questions maybe. But thank you first and for all, Femke, for your overview of what Vitesse and Vitesse Betrokken are doing in the local community of Arnhem. Of course, you explained this a lot about for the young people, but yeah, I follow you a bit, of course, in my role as communication manager, and yeah, I think that yeah, also thumbs up for everything you do with around the Veterans Day. I think Vitesse Arnhem, of course, historically from the Second World War, do really important things to highlight the veterans, and I think that's apart from the United Kingdom, you are one of the very few clubs who will do so in the Netherlands. So thank you for being there for the younger and the older people and everything in between for your community. And there are no other questions. I would like to ask you if it's possible to put to switch your cameras on for just a little picture for us, so that you can share that later on our social media channels.
Should I stop sharing my screen?
Yes, maybe that's easier. Yeah. Then please, if there are any questions, we can answer them now. Otherwise, we're a little bit ahead of schedule then, and then we can have a small coffee break. Welcome back. We just had a little coffee break. We would like to continue the webinar with a presentation of Niels van Muiden. Maybe I pronounced it way too Dutch. Excuse me then, Niels, of the FAIR Network and the Changing the Chants project. As head of programs, he's responsible for the management and coordination of the FAIR programs and campaigns. And of course, this very important one of Changing the Chants on anti-Semitism. The FAIR Network is an international umbrella organization of more than uniting 150 NGOs in more than 40 countries. So Niels, yeah, I would like to give you the microphone. Thank you very much for joining us today. And yeah, please tell us a bit more about this great initiative.
Yes, Stijn, thanks for the introduction. Also, thank you for the rest of the EFDN staff and inviting me. Yeah, to share something about Changing the Chants. Yeah, I hope, I assume everybody can hear me and can see the presentation. Still not getting used to online presentations, even after all this time after COVID. So hopefully soon meet everybody in person. Yeah, my name is Niels van Muiden. Stijn pronounced it actually correct. And yeah, I work for FAIR Network. Stijn already said we are an international organization. We specifically focus on tackling discrimination and racism in football, but we also use football as a tool yeah, to promote social inclusion, equality and diversity. And in my work, I'm specifically responsible for our campaigns. One of those campaigns is the Football People Weeks that actually start tomorrow. And also we do, for example, the Football vs. Homophobia Month of Action. And I'm also responsible for our work in European projects. One of those projects is Changing the Chants, but we are also doing, for example, projects on inclusion of refugees. And also next to my work, I'm actually a member of an external advisory group at Crystal Palace in London, whereby yeah, I advise and provide input on their equality and diversity action plan. Yeah, in this presentation, I quickly take the opportunity to discuss about the Changing the Chants project, but also go briefly into the issue of anti-Semitism in football, with a key focus on what the Changing the Chants project is doing about it. share some key moments and discuss what's next. After my presentation, Marissa Slenk, who is also here, she is a contributor to the Changing the Chants project. She will go more into detail in a workshop session on the best practices, but also the guidelines that the Changing the Chants project developed. These guidelines are specifically developed for clubs or NGOs or organizations to actually start being active in this project and or this topic to tackle anti-Semitism. The Changing the Chants project, it is a 2-year project. It's funded by the Rights, Equality and Citizenship Program of the European Commission, and the main goal was to develop educational methods to counter anti-Semitism in football, whereby we specifically wanted to focus on deepen the understanding of approaches that football clubs can use. So approach is basically to educate supporters and fans on anti-Semitism, but also raise awareness, and also after that to actively contribute to tackling the issue and to start projects and activities. So the Changing the Chants consortium consists of 4 partners. Anne Frankhuis was the lead partner. Then there were 2 professional football clubs, Borussia Dortmund and Feyenoord Rotterdam. And we are a partner. All project partners were previously or before the project active in the field of anti-Semitism. Anne Frankhuis and Feyenoord already worked together on educational programs. Dortmund also had a lot of program in place to work with fans, including educational project around the topic of anti-Semitism. And we with FAIR, we collected data and monitor matches on incidents, including anti-Semitic incidents, through a European Observer program. So about 2 years ago, maybe a bit longer now, the project partners actually decided to join forces. We were all working on the topic, but also realized that there is a need to do more, work together, but also specifically see how can we work towards developing guidelines or methods that can be used by other clubs. And first of all, we acknowledged, of course, that anti-Semitism in football is a persistent issue. Shay also mentioned an incident already, but we see still on a regular scale incidents in football. We are confronted with incidents in stadiums, but also online, but also on match days, for example, in cities, in bars, for example. So not only in the stadium. And we see a wide variety of different forms of anti-Semitic incidents, incidents that are committed by fans, but also by players. And it's a European-wide issue. So recently we saw a couple of incidents. I don't want to make it too grim, but I have a couple of examples. So these are just 3 incidents. 2 are recent, 1 is a bit older. The first one is the graffiti. This is a graffiti made by Feyenoord fans, depicting a player that actually went from Feyenoord to Ajax. Ajax is a club with to be perceived to be Jewish, with a Jewish nickname. So there's a lot of anti-Semitic abuse directed to this club. And the tweet or the screenshot of the tweet, this is the one that Shay referred to. These are fans from Maccabi Haifa that actually attended the match and that were actually physical and verbally abused by fans from Union Berlin. They were called names, people threatened them and they threw a beer at them. The last example is a banner made by Lazio fans that says, apologies for the the text, but it says Auschwitz is your home or your country, and the ovens are your home. So what you see from these different examples is the different background. It's all clearly anti-Semitic incidents. One is directed specifically against Jewish fans. Then there is the one that actually is directed at club or players that perceive to be Jewish, in this case Ajax. We have the same example, for example, in England with Spurs, Tottenham Hotspur. And the last one with the banner is clearly that there's a reference to the Holocaust, and it's meant to describe the opponent team or the opponent fans as being Jewish and therefore inferior. These three examples are just a small tip of the iceberg, unfortunately. FAIR is running a European Observer program. We are actually assessing matches, sending people to stadiums, but also do online monitoring and media monitoring. And we reported more than 50 major anti-Semitic incidents, also in 14 European countries. So it's not only in the UK or Netherlands, Belgium, but it's in Poland, it's in Italy, it's Eastern Europe. It's actually, European-wide. And this is only professional football. So we don't really have any stats or data on grassroots football. But it's safe to say that the majority of the incidents is not reported. So in tackling anti-Semitism, we think that there's a multi-layered approach. So first of all, incidents do unfortunately happen, and you need to follow up on incidents. So you need to condemn and act. And in the majority of the cases, this happens through sanctions. Sanctions can be in the form of, for example, fines or stadium bans, but also, for example, compulsory awareness trainings. But it starts with acknowledging the incident. So that clubs speak out, that they clearly say, okay, there is an anti-Semitic incident. So also mention the type of incident and say that they want to follow up. In some cases, this happens. In some cases, unfortunately, we too often see that there's a kind of soft or shallow apology from a club or explanation. So, but this is of course the follow-up that is reactive. So after an incident, with Changing the Chants, but also with FAIR, we also think that there is a need to focus on, say, preventive approach, and this specifically looks at developing educational methods. It can start with data collecting, so you can see what is happening, how often does it happen, where does it happen, so that you can target your groups. Because developing educational materials also means that you look at who are you developing them for, working with fans, but also club administrators, governing bodies, etc. So it's clearly to see who are you addressing it to. And then we think that there must be cooperation. So not everybody can solve all the problems on their own. So we encourage cooperation between clubs, fan groups, governing bodies, but also NGOs, or that this could be Jewish organizations, but for example, also anti-discrimination bodies. The Changing the Chants project specifically focused or built upon two separate educational programs for football fans, one run by Borussia Dortmund and the other one by Feyenoord. These education initiatives, they were not similar, but they were exchanged and analyzed. I think it's important to say that central in both projects was working with fans, but there's a slight difference. In Dortmund was not working with, say, the perpetrators directly, but they were working with fans, fan groups, staff, but also staff from sponsors. And they were developing educational materials and programs whereby they looked at the shared or the Jewish history, the Jewish heritage of the club, including workshops and educational trips to memorial sites in Poland, but also in their own city. This is similar to what Feyenoord is doing. They are also looking at the history of their, or the Jewish history of their club. They also work with fans, but Feyenoord is working with fans that are also, in some cases, sanctioned. This is also to do with, say, the background. In case of, say, diehard neo-Nazis who have anti-Semitic thoughts, specifically targeting the Jewish community, you could say you are not welcome. We don't want to do anything with you. In the case of Feyenoord and in the Netherlands, the anti-Semitic incidents or anti-Semitic slurs are directed against Ajax fans, but of course are still targeting and harming the Jewish community. So Feyenoord is working with the Jewish community, brings them in contact with fans to explain why their anti-Semitic behavior is harming the community. So our project, the Changing the Chants project, and the partners worked on these educational projects to develop methods, also for other groups to work on the topic. We looked at how it's possible to translate the experience from Dortmund and Feyenoord to, say, transnational projects, because in every case you deal with different backgrounds, different situations, different local history, etc. One thing I want to state is that it's not necessary for clubs to start when there is an incident. Of course, if there's an incident, you need to speak out and you need to act. But you can also work with fans on this topic of anti-Semitism and to raise awareness. If there's no incidents, you can celebrate or look into the Jewish history of the club and community, and you can remember, highlight the contribution of the Jewish fans, supporters, sponsors, etc. to your club, and make a connection or link to current societal issues. During this project, so we built on these educational projects, and we have had a couple of key moments in the project. It started with the pilot events. These were the events where Dortmund and Feyenoord exchanged their programs, and especially to see how can you organize these activities in other countries. And based on this pilot events, we followed up with extensive research on what other groups and other clubs are doing in Europe. We had a team of contributors. Marissa is one of them, but those contributors were from multiple countries in Europe, and they did research on best practices in Europe. So what are clubs doing? Which form does their work take? Is it campaigning? Is it educational projects? Is it in the form of, for example, an award? In Germany, there's the Julius Hirsch Award. And they collected all these best practices and formed them into a compendium. They are online on our website. We also followed up after this research to develop guidelines and recommendations. They are specifically for clubs, in order to say how to start, why would you be involved, and specific tips and tricks. Marissa will go in more detail in the best practice and the recommendation guidelines after my presentation. And we produced a documentary. This documentary is showing the work that has been done by the partners and the project. I'm not very objective, but I would say and suggest that everybody watches it. And the second part, which is that we are actually doing a series of national and European-wide events. We organize a Changing the Chants conference. This event is actually one of those European-wide events or national events. And our goal is here to reach the wider football community, but also fans. The project is still ongoing. It's ending this year, but we can already say that we had some impact. We have reached football community through stakeholder meetings. We did a lot of work with SLOs in Germany and the Netherlands. And we have seen interest from organizations, for example, the Pro League in Belgium, who are willing to develop their own projects. And also through the documentary reached wider and broader audience. So yeah, what's next? Officially, the Changing the Chants project is ending this month, but this does of course not mean that our work ends. The project parties involved, they will of course continue their work on raising awareness and tackling anti-Semitism in their daily work, but we will also keep working with our network of fans, SLOs, other groups that we reach throughout the project. I also invite anyone present to join this network, and hopefully together we keep inspiring fans and clubs to take action. At the end of the presentation of Marissa or the work of Marissa, we will share our contact details, but I hope that if people are interested, they can reach out to us. For now, I thank you for attending and listening.
Thank you very much, Niels, for this really great explaining this great project between the Anne Frank House, Borussia Dortmund, Feyenoord, and your fair network. I see that Marissa, who you introduced already as a contributor and a consultant for your project, also shared some links in the chat. So please feel free, everyone, to click on that and have a further look. Marissa Schlenker, very warm welcome also to you. Thank you for joining us with your expertise. And you will give us a workshop about the Changing the Chants project. So thank you very much for that. And we're ready to listen to your contribution.
Thank you. Thank you, Niels. Thank you, Stijn. And also, I'd like to also, Willem is here, and he was very much involved with Changing the Chants project. So it's also great to see everyone here. What I really want to focus this workshop on is, so we have deliverables. Niels called them key moments. And for us, the group, so I was part of the contributors, it was a group of researchers, so different academics who are studying this topic, and then also practitioners. And I would put myself in the latter group because I work more with football and football specific projects and really looking at the non-formal education different projects that exist within the football space. So for me, that was where I got involved, and it was an amazing experience. I got to interview, I got to be part of the research process. Niels kind of alluded to some of the work that we did, but we really reached out, we conducted surveys, we did interviews. And so in order to actually come and arrive at these deliverables, then there was a lot of work put into that, of course. And there's also, besides, in addition to these deliverables, which we will discuss in this workshop today, there's also other research which is referenced at the end of the guidelines. So before I get started though on this workshop, I just kind of want to say the main objectives are to go through the best practices. We will be doing breakout rooms. I hope that that's okay for everybody. I see some people are not on camera, but just to let everybody know that. So we will be doing breakout rooms, and then we'll come back and do a little discussion based on what you all discussed in your breakout rooms. And then we'll look together through the guidelines, just as a group here, because we're a small group. And then at the end, if we've got time, we'll show the trailer of the documentary. So really this session is about the tools that were created out of the Changing the Chants project. And hopefully then you feel more comfortable if you're interested in using them, or if you want to refer them to other people within the football industry, then at least you've had a taste today. Before we get started, so I posted in the chat the best practices. If everybody can see that, and actually it would be really important that you download the best practices, because when we go into breakout rooms, then I'm going to ask us to discuss those. So I hope that's okay. If anyone just wants to give me, do you see it in the chat? Yeah, okay, let's give everybody a moment. I'm going to share my screen while everybody, and again, this is the project website, so you'll be able to find a lot of other resources, but just for the moment, we're going to be looking at the best practices. All right, so for me, I really like more hands-on types of workshops. It's hard virtually, but we'll do as best as we can. And so what I would suggest, oh, wait 1 second. Can you all see my screen? Oh, there we go. Niels, I'm looking at you because you're right below me. Okay, so what I would suggest, so once you open up the practices, you'll see that there's categories. And as Niels mentioned, everything has at its core an educational component, but we did notice that when we started to collect practices, you had some which were very about education, so new information, knowledge, and then others were about kind of different categories. So what I would suggest in the next 10 minutes, and if I could get help from the kind of tech team, that we would divide into 2 groups. And one will really primarily look at the category of the educational practices, and you'll see those labeled in the compendium. And then the other group, so group 1 would be educational practices, and the other would be remembrance and commemoration. And just, I know it takes some time to look through them, but just look over the practices within that category. And I'll also post these questions into the chat, so you'll be able to reflect on them. But first, individually look at them. Maybe for some people, it's the first time seeing this, and then reflect in a group. So obviously they have categories, so there's a certain commonality, but think of other things that you think you find in common between the practices. And then also think about which ones stood out to you, and what was it about those that stood out. And then also the last thing that I would ask in this kind of 10-minute breakout rooms is to think about what part of the practices could be replicated. As Neil said, it's a lot about also showing practices to inspire other clubs to act and how they could act. So we wanted to also think about what part of these practices do you think could be replicated even at your own club or another club. And then the last question is, what information is missing from these kind of descriptions? So what else would you need to know in order to replicate or to test out these practices? So if I can get some help just in creating the breakout rooms, and then we'll do those for 10 minutes. And then I'll post the questions here into the chat so that everybody, obviously it's hard to remember them. And then just one person while you're talking, if someone can just kind of take note, and then when we come back, we'll do a short kind of feedback round. All right, that was a good, I think Maria also asked a good question also for maybe Niels and Willem is kind of, okay, there's a lot of focus on fans. And then she wanted to kind of know what's next after this. So I don't know if Niels, if you want to kind of repeat some of the things, just a couple points that you said about building a network and a couple of things. So I think that could be helpful for some of the people here who are interested in what happens next.
You mean what happens next with the project, or what happens next?
Yeah, what happens next? So you've got these tools, like the different things, so that you mentioned building a network, but then also the website will continue to be there, you know, and this type of stuff. So just a couple of things I think that would be helpful to share.
The thing is what we will do, but that's up to the individual partners, of course. So Dortmund and Feyenoord will continue with their work. They will keep on organizing educational workshops and educational trips and workshops, etc. Anna Frankhuis is continuing working together with these clubs. They are also working with FC Utrecht, and they will try to reach more. With FAIR, we will try to work with grassroots organizations specifically, and we try to link our work to this topic. So for example, we have the 4 People Weeks campaigns coming up. We normally have a grassroots organization that organize, for example, activities, workshops. We want to ask or share and get people involved to then do activities around these kind of topics. So we say, okay, listen, maybe you can look into setting up or doing something with your club on this topic, if it's relevant in that specific country. But the thing is, it's a bit of what I said earlier, it's not only fans are important to set it up, but it's also important that clubs are willing to do something. So it's also good then to, for example, so we have working relationships with also national associations. So we try to also contact them. But that's our existing network. So yeah, specifically like official Changing the Chants activities. I don't think they will be specifically organized, but this is just simply the funding of the European Commission. But the anti-Semitic or tackling anti-Semitic activities will be organized still. But it's mainly to try to disseminate these guidelines and best practices to people that can work with it. Fan groups, fan networks, SLOs. Yeah, that's it.
Get these tools into people's hands who actually, would want to do something with them and find them useful. And to continue on that line, I'm going to just share one more time. So in addition to, I shared in the chat, in addition to the compendium of best good practices, we always coupled it then with guidelines. So from the beginning, the idea was it's not just good practices to inspire and to give examples, because I don't know if you were able to kind of look through them. I mean, some of them there's a background, there's a key item or a key point to it, but they don't necessarily tell you how to go about doing these practices. So this is why we always envisioned, and this is why the contributor team with the partners created the guidelines. The guidelines are a little bit as normal, they're a little bit longer, but really they're really important, and try to, if you're interested, even no matter where you are. So Neil said, you don't have to just react to something, you can also be proactive and start thinking about how you would like to address, if there are issues and different manifestations of anti-Semitism in your club, in your community. So these guidelines are supposed to work and support people from different starting points. And so the why behind these guidelines, again, is to encourage action against anti-Semitism within the world of football. And as Niels kind of explained, a lot of the why this is a problem, where we see it in football, what are the implications, that kind of research is included in the guidelines to kind of, for those people who don't necessarily know that it is a problem and how it would look like if it is a problem and where they would see it. So there's that background information in the guidelines. And then that's the first part. And then it also, the purpose is to show you how. So if you are a stakeholder in football, whether it's grassroots to professional, how you can take either your first step in initiating a partnership or initiating a project, or if you're already doing something, how you can further develop your work. And so really, what I would say is always try to couple the two, so the guidelines and the compendium, if you are thinking about using these as a tool or also sharing with anyone else. And so just a little bit, because I think it's helpful when you're given such a document to explain a little bit more. So the section 1 is really about, as always with a lot of guidelines, it's the background. So anti-Semitism has many faces. What does it look like? Why is it important to engage with this issue at a community level, not even just in football? And then it also gives some stats and some research, so you can back that up. And then also further, research and further resources for further information. Say you have to kind of make the case that this is important. So that's what really section 1, it frames the issue. And then it also kind of makes us realize that it's an issue throughout society. And then section 2 is thinking, okay, what can football do and why should football do something? Why should football clubs act? Who within the industry should act? Who are different stakeholders? Who are the different stakeholders to act on such projects? And so section 2 takes a more strategic. So, now you know that this is an issue if you didn't already, or you don't even need to read that part if you already know it's an issue, but you want to act. And so this is more about strategic. And then it's also very much operational. So a lot of what you'll see is also very much project operational. So planning projects, how to do kind of a monitoring and evaluation plan, how to get different stakeholders involved from the beginning, doing different consultations. And then it's very specific to football. So how to involve fan groups, local community groups, and so on and so forth. So we also hope that it's got a very operational purpose to it, so that you can use it and actually use it as a guide if you were to start your project. And then we're not going to do breakout rooms on this or anything. I just wanted to present it to you all. And if we do have time, I'm looking at you, Maria, because I think you're keeping track of time. We wanted to show the trailer of the documentary. So this is, if this would be possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me? I can share screen and then share the trailer. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, just a second.
Perfect.
Sorry, Marissa, I've got to leave.
You've got to leave. It's okay.
See you soon.
Okay, one sec. Hopefully this will work.
70% der Erwachsenen haben eine Fußfehlstellung. Maßgefertigte orthopädische
Hold on.
Schuheinlagen sind das effektivste Hilfsmittel dagegen. Aber nur 20%.
All right, now this should work. Good.
By singing these songs, you're excluding fellow supporters who are not comfortable with visiting the matches anymore.
I was sitting in the stadium many times and I heard those chants, "Who is not jumping is a Jew." And well, it gives pain in my heart and in the heart of other Jewish people.
What we want to do is try to let them find out themselves that what they are singing is really hurtful.
Tackling anti-Semitic behavior within football definitely has an effect on wider society as well, mostly because we should not see football as isolated from wider society. Many people watch football and it has a big part of many of our lives.
Last year I met a participant of our first educational trip in 2011, and she told us that the program had such a powerful impact on her that she decided to study to become a lawyer because she wanted to make sure that something like that could never happen again.
We are mainly focused on the educational approach. I think it's a very important part of tackling anti-Semitism and racism, but we cannot do it alone. We need a coalition of many organizations that share the sense of urgency that we have about these issues and that are willing to help us, and we are willing to help them in order to overcome these problems.
All right. So, and just so you know, the documentary is also available online. It's 22 minutes. So that was about 2 minutes, I believe. So that can also be a tool that you can use in different events and also to kind of introduce the topic and the project to others. So I guess for me, I can leave it there. I hope that that was beneficial and that you all understood a little bit more about the context behind the project and then the deliverables. And and then I think, Niels, we could just share in the chat, or to Maria, to all the participants, your email and how to get in touch.
Perfect.